Hi class, it's Miss McVey and welcome to Miss McVey's Life. First of all, a couple of housekeeping things. One, this is not my bedroom, so don't think that you've seen into Miss McVey's private bedroom. This is just a room I'm borrowing to use. Two, in case you guys hear any meowing or anything, this, oh, she's meowing, she doesn't want to be seen, but that's Audrey. That's my black cat. And she'll be popping in and out throughout the video. But today we're just going to start kind of small, kind of easy. This shouldn't be any longer than 10 minutes unless I get really into it. But I just want to show you guys a few things in regards to Act 3 for the Crucible. I'm really sorry that we can't do this in person. The Crucible can kind of be dry and boring when you're reading it. And my hope is that when we're in class, I try to make it a little bit more animated and a little bit more fun. But since we can't do that, we're going to adapt and we're going to roll with it. And so I'm going to walk you guys through Act 3 in some certain scenes. I'll show you some things that I really want you to point out to. After this video, you guys are going to be responsible for about 3 things to get done on Google Classroom before class ends at 9:35. So watch this video, take notes, make sure you really understand Act 3. If you don't, please ask me questions at any time. Then you need to do Activity 1, which is a set of questions. Activity 2, which is a fun activity, fun, and an exit ticket, which is how I know that you stayed the duration of 8 to 9:35, or like the whole class basically. So you need to get those 3 things done after watching the video. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to ask me. Just because this is a pre-recording, I'm still live at my laptop with my computer, with my phone, with my email and everything, so you guys can always contact me. Starting next week, they really do want us to use Google Meet or Skype or some sort of thing where you get to see me live and I don't get to pre-record and practice. But for now, I'm just going to keep doing this. This is where I'm the most comfortable. But please, guys, the next few weeks, try and wear a uniform. Make sure you're taking attendance and saying here on the Google Classroom post. Keep trying, keep pushing through. So, okay, let's start with Act 3. So, sorry, this is going to be hard because I like asking you guys questions and you guys really are the ones that enthuse me, but we're going to do it together. So Act 2 ends, and where does Act 2 end? What ends up happening? Who's getting arrested? So Elizabeth Proctor gets arrested and she's accused by Abigail, of course. Now we keep asking ourselves, what are the motivations behind these characters? Why are they doing what they're doing? And for Abigail, keep in mind, it's who. It's not a what that she wants, it's a who. And she wants John Proctor, who she had an affair with. And remember, just because she loves John, John doesn't necessarily love her. To John, it was just a one-time hookup, you would say. But to Abigail, being young, being a virgin, and all that goes with it, she's obsessed with him to the point that she will have his wife arrested and therefore murdered under the name of witchcraft, under the cry of witchcraft. So Elizabeth gets taken away in chains, and John Proctor's whole plan to free his wife, to free Francis's nurse wife and Giles Corey's wife, is to take Mary Warren, his servant, one of the girls that's been crying witchcraft this whole time, force her into court, and make her testify, make her tell the truth that Abigail and everybody's lying. Now, me having been a teenage girl, and you currently being teenage girls, know that this plan is probably not going to work. Unless you're just super strong of heart and courage and morals, it's going to be hard and it's going to be scary to not only testify in front of a judge who's a total jerk, which we'll get into, but also to turn on your friends. And not just your friends, but the entire town of girls that will turn on you should you turn on them. So it's going to be a lot really scary for Mary Warren, and we know from her past kind of actions that she is immature, she's a fool, she's naive, and for lack of a better word, stupid, and pretty much cowardly. The fact that she's even been going along with this whole time should testify that she's not a good person. So before you read Act 3, I hope you saw that John's plan of bringing Mary Warren in was probably going to backfire, and my God, does it completely backfire for him toward the end of Act 3. So Act 3 starts, and we're now in this courthouse, and there's 2 new characters that we're going to be introduced to. There's Judge Danforth, and there's Judge Hawthorne. Now, did you notice that Judge Hawthorne's name is Hawthorne, as in related to Nathaniel Hawthorne, who wrote The Scarlet Letter, which was a book that was anti-Puritan? And do you remember that Nathaniel Hawthorne, the author, changed his last name because he was embarrassed by the fact that his ancestor, that his great-great-grandfather, was a judge in the Salem witch trials? So Arthur Miller, the author, is referencing that fact that Judge Hawthorne was a real person. So that's just a little interesting side bit. But so we have these two judges, and they're not just regular judges that are a part of this everyday town. They're big judges. They're known in the community. They're known in the state. They're not necessarily like Supreme Court judges, but they're really high up there. They've been practicing law for years, and they're very studied, and people really respect their decisions. And that's why they were brought into this kind of chaos that is the Salem witch trials. Now, when we open up, we have these two judges, and we have Rebecca Nurse has already been charged, and not just charged, but she's been prosecuted and she's been found guilty. And now Martha Corey, Giles' wife, is also right now being accused of witchcraft. And the judge asked her, he literally says, "Are you a witch?" And she replies, "I am innocent to a witch. I know not what a witch is." So he's like, "Well, if you don't know what a witch is, then how can you say you're not a witch?" She goes, "Well, I would know if I was a witch if I was a witch." So those sentences are kind of confusing, and that's okay if you got a little lost in the dialogue. And throughout Act 3, there's a lot of these weird kind of paradox, juxtaposition, sentences that don't seem to make sense. And that's the point. The point is for these arguments to be illogical. These points don't really have points. They don't really make sense for a lot of reasons, and that's because there is no real evidence. There is no real argument. How can she prove she's not a witch? How can I prove? How could I literally prove to you right now that I'm not a witch? I could say I'm not a witch, but of course that's what a witch would say. However, there's a lot of evidence against me that I am a witch. I am single past the age of 25, meaning single, not married. I own a black cat. Of all colors, I own a black cat. I read my horoscope from time to time, which is technically like the devil's work. So there's a lot of evidence against me, and could I have been arrested in this time period? Absolutely, if somebody had it out for me. And would I have been hanged? Probably. Probably, because you can't really argue with these people because none of these arguments make sense. So if you were frustrated, if you were angry, if you were confused throughout Act 3, good. Because the people of Salem were angry and frustrated and confused. And the people of communist 1950s against the Russians were angry, confused, and frustrated with society. But you can't really argue with authority here because authority is always right. So we go on, she gets arrested, Giles tries to fight for her. He's having a really hard time, especially because Reverend Paris is there. And if you remember, Reverend Paris and Mr. Putnam are not really good guys. Reverend Paris is the father of Betty, who is faking the illness, is the uncle of Abigail, and who really cares and is motivated by his reputation. And then you have Mr. Putnam, who really cares about money and wealth, and he's motivated by getting more wealth and money and property from people that he accuses. So it's kind of hard to argue with these people in this town, and Giles is kind of an angry old man and kind of curmudgeon-y, and he rubs people the wrong way, so he's not really helping his own case. So what Francis does, remember that's Rebecca Nurse's husband, he comes in with a testimony of a list of 93 or something like that, 90 people's names who all wrote their names swearing that Martha Corey and Elizabeth Proctor and Rebecca Nurse were good people and that they've never seen them do anything of witchcraft. Now that's actually pretty amazing that there's 93 witnesses, and that alone should be enough. However, Reverend Paris, being the coward that he is, being suspicious and angry, tells the judge that we should interview these 93 people. We should find out why these 93 people wrote that. And Francis Nurse doesn't want to do that. And you have to ask yourself, why would Francis Nurse not want these 93 people names to be out there? Why would he not want them questioned if they're telling the truth? And it's because you've seen this court system. It's corrupt. The second that they're brought in, if they say one thing wrong, then they're for sure going to be arrested. They're for sure going to be hanged. And so they end up taking this list, and despite Francis's and Giles' protests and trying to help their friends, they end up kind of getting these 93 people in trouble. And that's when Francis and Giles kind of realize this is ridiculous. Now, keep in mind this whole time, Judge Danforth is really the main judge. He's the main character in this act that you guys need to look at. He's new to this act in this play, and he's an interesting character in that he's older, and he kind of appears to be wise, but he's actually just really, really, really motivated by his own reputation and his own superiority and his own name. So even when he hears things are logical and he knows are logical, he's going to throw that away because he doesn't want anybody questioning his name, questioning the authority of the court, or questioning his judgments. So watch, even when he's proved wrong, he will not allow that evidence in because he can't be wrong because he's so smart. How could he be wrong? How could he be lied to by, how could he be deceived by a group of teenage girls? There's no way he's that stupid. But he is. So, we fast forward a little bit. Proctor comes in, and of course he comes in with Mary Warren, like promised. Now, this is not the next day from Act 2. This is a few days later. Why is it a few days later? Why didn't Mary Warren just jump into court right away and testify? It's because she's scared. She's been, like I said, racking with her soul and racking with her mortality and arguing with herself of whether she should turn in Abigail and everybody, because turning in Abigail is the right thing to do, but she'll probably die for it. She's damned if she does, and she's damned if she doesn't. Either way, she's going to get in trouble. But Proctor convinces her, kind of forces her in, and brings her into the room, and she tells the judge that it was pretense. Now, I hope you guys were able to pick up on what pretense means. It means it was pretend. She means that everybody was pretending, all the girls were faking it. Every time somebody passed out in court or felt somebody grabbing their throat or saw something invisible, it was pretend. And this really confuses but also intrigues Danforth, and he's like, I don't understand that it could be pretend. And he asks Proctor, why are you here? Why are you bringing Mary Warren? Why are you trying to do this? And Proctor says that he wants to save his wife. And so the judge goes, well, if you really want to save your wife, we just found out this morning that your wife is pregnant. Oh my gosh, Elizabeth Proctor is pregnant. Which changes a lot of things, because if Proctor really just wanted to save his wife and that was it, then the judge offers him a deal and says, if you stop questioning the court, we will protect your wife the entire time that she's pregnant, plus while she's nursing the baby, so that gives her at least another year for sure without being hanged. And Proctor doesn't take the deal. And now for the first two acts, that's okay if you've hated Proctor, that's okay if you've been mad at Proctor that he cheated on his wife, which is a horrible thing, and that he's pretty much been a coward this whole time. But this is the first time he really steps up and steps into his role as a protagonist, as a leader of the town, because instead of taking the easy way and just saving his wife, or at least postponing his wife's death, he says that he needs to stand up for his friends' wives as well, and that he needs to stop this whole sham, or this whole charade that Abigail's having, not just for his own personal gain, but because of everybody else. So now we finally have a character that's motivated intrinsically. We have a character that's motivated by the needs of others and not just the needs of himself. So if that makes sense, think about everything that's going on with this whole coronavirus. Everybody has been panicking, and everybody has been trying to take care of themselves and their families first. So if you've seen someone that's gone to the grocery store and has bought every single last roll of toilet paper on their own, they're protecting their own family and themselves. However, they hurt the entire community when they do that, because then nobody else has toilet paper and nobody else can do what you need to do with toilet paper, and then your hands are gross, and then now they're spreading germs. So it's hurting the community as a whole. So the right thing to do is to share with people, right? Is to look out for the whole community, not just for yourself. And so now Proctor is stepping up and looking out for the community. He is going to take Abigail down, not just to save his wife, but to save everybody else that's been accused and that's about to hang. So now we're seeing Proctor step up. So now you can be a little bit more proud of him. Still, he cheated on his wife, which is not right, but he is trying his best to save his soul and save his town now. So let's at least root for him in this part. So, moving on. Danforth is having a hard time understanding this. And Danforth is having a hard time coming to terms with that the girls could ever lie to him. And again, tell yourself it's because he cares about his reputation. He cares that about not looking stupid, because that would be pretty embarrassing if like a 70-year-old judge who's been studying law for 35 years was tricked by a group of teenage girls. That looks bad for him, so he can't readily admit that. So instead they try to play some kind of courtroom games, and they try and do some legal things. And I'm going to explain some of these things to you. So one of the things that happens is, sorry guys, lost my page. Is proof. Is this idea of what's evidence and what is proof in the court. And one of the things that Giles brings up, this is Giles Corey, he says that he has proof that Mr. Putnam, that evil guy, is having his daughter, one of the teenage girls, accuse people because he wants land. And that's his proof, is that he has somebody who overheard Mr. Putnam literally say that. Like, daughter, please pretend to be sick in court against so-and-so so that I could take so-and-so's property. Giles has a witness that says that. And the judge wants to interview that witness, which kind of makes sense. It's actually a pretty good legal thing. But Giles refuses to name the witness. And which is so frustrating, because even if he brought that witness in, I mean, who knows if anybody would believe him. The only thing that Giles Corey knows is that bringing in a witness or bringing in somebody else in this court is just going to get this person arrested. It's just going to get this person in trouble. So he refuses to name it. And because of that, sorry, my cat. Because of that, he is frustrated that, sorry, I want to move my cat for a second because she's doing something she's not supposed to. Hold on. Audrey, get out of the box. It's okay. It's okay. Say hi. Say hi. Okay. Good girl. Sorry, guys. Life at home. So he's doing something he's not supposed to, right? So he brings in, he's supposed to bring in this witness, but Giles doesn't want to, because this witness is gonna get arrested, and this witness is gonna get accused of witchcraft probably. So he's now what's called being held in contempt of court, which means that he's refusing to give the court something that it's asking for, and you can technically be arrested for that. So if you got arrested, if you got brought to court and the court asked you to say, did you see so-and-so on this day rob a bank? And if you refuse to answer, if you plead the fifth, if you just go silent, that doesn't mean you get away with not telling the court what you saw. They can hold you in contempt, which means that you are not helping the court, you're hurting it in some way. And you can get arrested and sent to jail and probably have a fine for that. So now Giles Corey is arrested. Everybody's getting arrested now because Danforth is just freaking out about his reputation. And what I hope you've noticed when you read Act 3 is Reverend Hale throughout all this. So remember, Reverend Hale is the guy who came in the first act like super gung-ho, a young, learned man. I was so excited to find a witch and prove all of his education was worth it. And then in Act 2, he came in a little bit more somber because he was kind of starting to question and starting to doubt some of these things. But now in Act 3, he's a complete mess and a complete train wreck, because he had to sign the death warrant of Rebecca Nurse, somebody that he respected, and now he's realizing that this court is a fraud, and it's dumb and it's stupid, but he's still holding on to one last shred of hope that they'll be saved. But we know by the end of Act 3, he loses all hope and he storms out of the courtroom. So leading into that, and into the most exciting parts of everything, is this idea of evidence. Like I said, Giles Corey evidence didn't work because he couldn't bring in the witness. And Reverend Hale tries to use logic as evidence. And Judge Danforth shuts him up and says this is his speech, Judge Danforth. Now we cannot hope that the witch will accuse herself, granted. Therefore, we must rely upon her victims. And they do testify. The children certainly testify. As for the witches, none will deny that we are most eager for all their confessions. Therefore, what is left for a lawyer to bring out? I think I have made my point. So it sounds kind of logical when you first hear it, but what he's saying is that thing I kept bringing up to you guys is, he's like, there's no point for lawyers in a courtroom because Because what could a lawyer do? A lawyer is supposed to ask questions. However, there's nobody to ask questions to because the girls are testifying and we're just taking their word for it. And all these witches are, of course, denying that they're witches because that's what a witch would do. So there's no point to have a lawyer. So this judge has basically taken away everybody's right by eliminating lawyers. Now, if you guys, knock on wood, if you guys ever get arrested for anything, God forbid, you did something or you didn't do something, but you got arrested, shut up, don't say anything, and get a lawyer. Get a lawyer. That's the best thing you can do for you because lawyers understand this argument talk. Lawyers understand this illogical, logical arguments. Lawyers will be able to help you not say something that would hurt you and incriminate you in any way. So get a lawyer. But what Judge Danforth is saying is, no lawyers in my court. My court's enough. God is with us. That's enough. Pretty much a joke, but this is Salem time, 1692, so nobody really had those kind of rights to argue it. Then Judge Danforth also, he gets angry at Reverend Paris, and that's just like a side thing in there. He gets angry at Reverend Paris because Reverend Paris is annoying, and he's so annoying during Act 3 because he's so terrified of being found out as a fraud, and he's so terrified of his reputation being hurt that he keeps trying to get in the way, and he keeps trying to say like, no, that's not evidence, that's not right. And Judge Danforth basically just tells him to shut up, which is a good moment. It's a sidebar kind of thing. So to the juicy part of everything is Mary Warren's testimony. And it takes a lot of convincing, it takes a lot of arguing between everybody about whether or not Mary Warren should be allowed to testify. And there's these arguments of, the puppet, right? The doll that Elizabeth had that Mary Warren gave her. And this whole time, Cheever keeps making things worse. So I told you guys Cheever was not a super important character, but he does come up a couple of times. And one of the things that he says is, hey, I just gotta let you know that we found a doll in Elizabeth's house. And Proctor's like, well, that's not her doll. And Cheever's like, but she said that she kept a doll when she was a kid. And Proctor's like, but she's not a kid anymore. You know, she hasn't been a kid for 15 years. And then Cheever says, but you can have a doll for 15 years. Who says she hasn't been hiding dolls? Who says she doesn't have invisible dolls? And Proctor's like, well, who says that she doesn't have an invisible dragon in the house either? But we don't have a dragon in the house. And then Paris says, well, that's exactly what we're dealing with, the invisible. We're supposed to be proving the invisible. Now, as someone who lives in 2020 and you're smart, you're an intelligent person, you should know this is the stupidest argument ever. Because if it's invisible,